Yes, hello and welcome to News Corp's first BBL mock draft. Of course, the BBL draft on Sunday, which we're all looking forward to. My name is Tim Mitchell, and today I'm going to be joined by News Corp cricket writers Ben Horn and Daniel Cherney, and one of our Supercoach BBL gurus, Dan Batten, as we preview how Sunday's first BBL draft could play out. And to do that, we've taken on the role of selectors for two clubs each. I've got the Strikers and the Heat. Ben has the Sixers and the Thunder. Dan Cherney has the Renegades and the Scorchers, and Dan Batten has the Stars and the Hurricanes. So some of the big names that are up for offer in our draft today and also on Sunday include Faf du Plessis, Andre Russell, Trent Boltz, and Dwayne Bravo. They're all available in the top tier of platinum players. But before we jump into our draft and give you an idea of how Sunday could play out, and we should say this is who we would pick if these players were available at that pick for each club. It's not necessarily who each club will end up picking, although Dan and Ben, I'm sure, have got a few nuggets for us that they'll give you all in the next sort of half an hour or 45 minutes. But Ben, how important is this addition of a draft for the future of the BBL, and what's the feeling that you're getting from clubs about how Sunday could play out?
Yeah, g'day, Tim. Thanks for having us. Look, it's exciting to have a draft. You know, we've been talking about it for 3 or 4 years now, and because of COVID, it hasn't been able to happen until now. So I think everyone's pretty excited to see how it goes. I think from the BBL's point of view, they feel like it's a way that they can keep the clubs accountable, and this is a way for them to go put a bit of pressure back on the clubs and go, all right, go and get these big names. You know, we can get them here. It's up to you to go and sign them. So there's a bit of pressure on the clubs to go and do the right thing for the competition, I suppose, and sign these big names that are going to, you know, boost the television audiences and boost the overall interest in the competition. So that's the hope. We'll see how it all goes, but there's a few sort of, you know, things I suppose that we won't find out till the night about how it all goes, and I'm sure there'll be plenty to learn for next year.
Definitely. And Dan Cherney, great to have you on board from Code Sports. What sort of tactics do you think we're going to see from the clubs on Sunday as well? You think about how the IPL franchises play off against each other during the IPL auction, and obviously a lot more money at stake and a lot more bidding goes on in the IPL auction. But do you think we'll see some of those similar strategies carry over to the BBL draft as well?
Oh, look, potentially. I mean, because we've got a mechanism whereby each club can retain up to one player from their list last year. So there's a little bit like the AFL draft bidding system where clubs can force other clubs' hands, matching that. I think everyone expects Rasheed Khan. We'll get to that shortly, but that the Strikers will retain him, given he's arguably the best T20 player in the world of recent years. But there's so many factors as well, because as has been widely reported, and Ben's been right across this, the UAE League and the South African League are competing against the BBL. So a lot of these players aren't going to be here the whole time. So that's one of the great considerations for clubs. You know, is 12 games of one player worth more than 6 of another? These are questions that are hard to answer. And there are also the strands of salaries, that the platinum, gold, silver and bronze, which complicate things as well, and has to fall within a salary cap. Some of the pay sits outside the cap. There's a lot of different mechanisms here. And I suppose we're going to try to explain some of the nuances as we go through this mock draft, but it's not necessarily that straightforward.
Yeah, definitely. So just before we bring Dan Batten in, Dan Cherney there, Ben, mentioned some of the different tiers that you can potentially draft players in. That's going to be a big factor for clubs, isn't it? Because buying someone as a gold player as opposed to a silver or bronze might be the difference between, say, getting them for 3 quarters or a full season, as opposed to them leaving halfway through and maybe taking a lucrative offer from South Africa or the UAE.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of people around the game are sort of sensing that maybe third round where we start to get the silver picks in, that's really going to separate the good drafting clubs from the bad, I suppose. Like if you can get value in that pick, that could be really telling. So, yeah, look, it is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. There's, as we know, there's not many, possibly only one platinum player that's here for the whole tournament. So that is interesting in itself. And, yeah, I suppose clubs just have to weigh up a few factors, including how many Australian Test players do they have coming back into their side. Because if you've got a couple of them, then perhaps you can afford to get a few guys that are only here for half the competition.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure some of those strategies will show up in our mock draft as well, which we'll get into very shortly. But Dan Batten, great to have you here as well. And you get the hardest question of them all. Which of these big names who have nominated for the draft? There's over 250 players nominated. Who are you most looking forward to seeing in the BBL this summer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess not all of the platinum players that were listed early this week will be picked up. Some are only platinum and maybe overlooked. But I guess of that list, the ones that really stand out are Trent Boltz, who recently revoked his New Zealand contract and looks to be set to be an early pick in the BBL draft. Also, Faf du Plessis, who we saw in the early instances of the BBL. I think he's going to be a really good player to watch, and obviously has been tearing it up in the IPL as well. So, but there'll be plenty of value and some surprising names when you scroll down the list. Just some names across world cricket, and who knows, there might be another Rasheed Khan or Mujib ur Rahman, these subcontinent spinners that end up emerging later in the piece.
Definitely. So the order for the first BBL draft, and we'll run through it as well. We mentioned the clubs that we're going to be taking on a bit earlier, but the Renegades have got the first pick, then the Melbourne Stars, Brisbane Heat are third, then the Sixers, the Strikers, the Scorchers, the Thunder, and the last franchise to pick will be the Hurricanes. So as you'll notice, though, after the first two rounds of the draft reverts to a snake order. So the Hurricanes pick last, I think, in round 2, and then pick first in round 3, which is something that we'll go through as our mock draft plays out. I don't think, without further ado, I know we're about 20 minutes behind where we're going to be already, which is just classic draft, isn't it? To waffle on a bit and talk much more than you needed to before the first pick of a draft. But Dan Cherney, you've got, as the selector for the Renegades, you've got pick 1, so fire away and let us know who you're going to take.
I thought we were going to have a monotonous sponsors plug there as well, Tim, but as is the way in drafts. But no, with pick 1, I have selected Rashid Khan, the Afghanistan leg spinner, of course. But I think that provides the Strikers with the right to retain.
Yeah, it does. And I think all the talk that we're hearing, and as I'm acting on behalf of the Strikers, I'm going to jump in and retain Rashid Khan, which I think is a move that is more than likely to happen on Sunday. I don't think it'd surprise any of us, would it, Ben, if the Renegades bid at pick 1 and then the Strikers retain Rashid, because he's such a fan favourite over there in Adelaide, and I think there'd be uproar in the city of churches if they let someone else take him.
Well, Jason Gillespie's basically promised that they will be taking Rashid Khan. But if you're the Renegades, why wouldn't you have a crack? I mean, there's nothing to lose. I guess you then, just on that 1% chance that you call the Strikers bluff, you still get your first pick anyway. So there's absolutely nothing to lose for the Renegades in doing that. I guess it comes down to, whether they are 110% sure that the Strikers are going to do it. But yeah, that maybe that's how it will start.
So Dan Cherney, I pinched your first pick. Where are you going to go now with pick 1 that becomes pick 2?
I've gone for Trent Boltz, the New Zealand paceman, who's sort of interesting of late because he's become a freelance cricketer. He's no longer tied to New Zealand centrally, which is quite a big move in the context of world cricket. Obviously, he's been a star across all 3 formats, but excellent strike bowler up front. There's been a bit of talk that the Renegades may look to get a batter here in real life. Faf du Plessis is one of the guys that they've been linked to. He played for them about a decade ago. Livingston, another. And Bolt's probably only going to be here for about half the competition, given he's off to the UAE. But I think from a Renegades perspective, they've struggled across all facets of the game, to be frank, over recent years. They've obviously finished bottom 3 years in a row. But I think that they need wickets. And when they won a few years ago, it was through bowling, and I think Trent Boltz is the best option.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be pretty disappointed taking Trent Boltz now. DB, you've got pick 3, acting on behalf of the Melbourne Stars, and I reckon Trent Boltz would have looked good on the green side of Melbourne as well. But this is where the draft might start to open up a bit with the platinum players. What way are you going to go with pick 3?
I think it's still best available here. Obviously, we would have loved a paceman in Trent Boltz. We really struggled. The Stars struggled in that area last year. But I'm going to go with Liam Livingston, who's arguably one of the most destructive batters in World T20 cricket at the moment. He's coming off an IPL campaign where he hit 437 runs at 182 which is not a bad strike rate. And he obviously more than handy with the ball as well. And he proved that on the world stage at the T20 World Cup last year with his leg spin. So I think he can provide a bit for the Stars. Obviously, they've got Maxwell, Stoinis, Zampa in there. And I think Livingston can add a bit with the bat and the ball as well. But obviously, he is off to another franchise competition as well. So he's probably going to be there for only half the comp.
And Ben, not available, but Liam Livingston is a retention pick because he didn't play last season for the Scorchers, even though we saw him a couple of summers ago.
Yeah, sorry, Tim. I just missed the start of that, mate.
Oh, just saying, I think a lot of people would hear Liam Livingston's name and think, the Scorchers would jump in here and take him as a retention pick. But the fact that, there we go. We've had a question from Joby along those lines. So I think the way that the rules are, because he didn't play for the Scorchers last summer, he's not available as a retained player as such, whereas they'll probably end up using that pick on Colin Munro or Laurie Evans, one of those that actually played for them last season.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, I think, you had to have played last season. So there's plenty in there that do have, clubs do have the rights to retain. But, I guess that's what makes Livingston, one of the reasons that makes him such an attractive proposition there, that, you can get him without a challenge. So I think that's a pretty smart pick. I sort of look at Livingston as one of the best players in the platinum category, I think.
Yeah, and proven in the BBL as well. So pick 4 is mine on behalf of the Brisbane Heat. And I couldn't lock this one in quickly enough because I think he just suits their needs perfectly. And that's Faf du Plessis, the former South African captain. I know they had AB de Villiers up there for a short stint a couple of seasons ago, and they'd love to add a bit of South African class to that top order for the Brisbane Heat. They lose Chris Lynn, who we expect will probably front up for the Adelaide Strikers for about half the season before he goes and plays overseas. And I think Faf du Plessis would be perfect to just slot in at number 3 or number 4 and provide that sort of experience that Brisbane Heat really need in their batting lineup. Like they have tried that many different combinations in recent seasons to get it right up the top of the order, and having someone of the class of Faf du Plessis at number 3 to just bat around, I think would be really beneficial for them. So I think Dan Cherny, and what do you think? Like if he gets through to their first pick, which will be 3 or 4 on draft night, I imagine the Heat would be absolutely cock-a-hoop to get du Plessis.
Yeah, and a pretty hard player to resist. Obviously brings the leadership as well. They've lost Chris Lynn, who was their captain. So, they need some senior heads there. They brought in Usman Shinwari, but nevertheless, pretty hard player to go past Faf, given all his history in the game.
It's sort of a no-brainer, I think, for the Heat, because they do have the luxury of having Khawaja and Marnus Labuschagne coming in at the point in time that Faf leaves. So some clubs will be very hesitant to take players that are only there for half a season. For the Brisbane Heat, I think it makes perfect sense. You can replace him with Usman Khawaja and you lose nothing.
Yeah, and this is where I was with the clubs that I ended up with the Heat and the Strikers. I was in that fortunate position because the Strikers are similar. Like they'll get Travis Head and they'll get Alex Carey back midway through the tournament. So they're maybe have a bit more flexibility with some of their picks as opposed to franchises that are trying to look for players through the whole season. But Benny, you're up with pick 5, and you're drafting on behalf of the Sixers. So who are you going to take with the Sixers' first pick?
The Sixers are going to take Chris Jordan, the England fast bowler. And look, I think 2 clubs that I think you can really expect to stay loyal to guys who have been there before would be the Sixers and the Scorchers. That's just sort of how they operate. They're the 2 most successful clubs, and I really think that they'll try and go back to guys that have been there before. Chris Jordan, I guess, probably hasn't been a long-term part in their organisation, and they didn't win last year, but he was there last season. He bowls those death overs, which is so important, and I think that's if you can get an overseas player to come in and be able to bowl those death overs, I think that's a huge plus.
3 picks left in the first round, and we'll head west now. Dan Cherny, you've got the Scorchers. Who do you think they might snap up if that was the way that the first 5 picks played out?
Look, I think there's a chance that the Scorchers in real life may actually pass in this round and take players over the next few. Obviously, they have a history with David Willi as well. For the sake of this exercise, though, if it was up to me, and with salary cap space not as much of a consideration as it is in real life. I would be going for Andre Russell. He is eligible actually to be matched by the Stars, having briefly played last year, but just obviously an extraordinary T20 player. That middle order power hitting, capable of bowling 140 plus when his body is upright, and he's a champion of the T20 game. I think it'd be a shame for the competition if he's not here. He's also another player who's probably going to duck off halfway through the campaign. But if it was up to me and the Scorchers, I'd be going for Andre Russell. I don't necessarily think they do that in real life. I think they've got, because of their cap and because of their loyalty to some of the players that they've drafted previously, and we'll probably get to that later. I think they might go elsewhere, but I think Andre Russell's a very hard player to pass up.
I've always felt like Dan. Oh, sorry, Dan. But I've always felt like that's maybe one of the areas. If like they don't lack for a lot, the Perth Scorchers, but a genuine like gun all rounder is something that they really haven't had. And I know they get Ash Agar for half a season in the last few years, but his numbers from the international scene probably haven't been replicated in the BBL. And then they've got Aaron Hardy, who we know been playing for Australia A recently, and looks like he's just about ready to take the next step. But it'd be pretty exciting, wouldn't it? And probably fill a hole that we haven't seen in that what is a real star-studded team for the Scorchers if they could get an absolute top-line all-rounder in.
I was just going to jump in quickly, Dan, with that. So potentially, if the Stars, say, did pick Livingston, for instance, and then there was a bid later on Andre Russell in the same round, can they then retain Andre Russell in that same round, or would it have to be in the next round?
That is a great question, and I genuinely don't know the answer. Can Ben provide one?
I don't know the answer either. I mean, we didn't cover that in our meeting, did we? But this is sort of what I'm getting at. There's a lot of things that, obviously us as no hoping journos don't know, but I think there's genuinely a lot of questions across the game about how some of these little intricacies are going to work, and namely like the clubs have sort of been in the dark about the availability length for a lot of these players, and I'm not even sure as we speak right now whether they're across the full picture. So that's the big thing. I mean, it might not be really until 48 hours before the draft that the clubs really know exactly how long these players are available for.
Yeah, I've just done some quick Googling and I can answer that one for you guys. So if a club has already used, is entitled to a retention pick, as the Stars would be in this case, but have already made a selection in that round, they are not allowed to use their retention pick. So that's going to be part of the strategy again. So if the Stars passed with their first pick, expecting that someone will take Andre Russell, that would then give them the option to come in over the top with their retention pick later in the round. But if they chose Liam Livingston, as Dan did, they then wouldn't be able to take Andre Russell later in the round. So all the fun that we're going to see on Sunday in the BBL draft anyway. But we should keep moving on. We've still got a couple of picks left in our first round, the platinum round of our draft as well. And Ben, it's back over to you on behalf of the Sydney Thunder. Who are you going to take with the Thunder's first pick?
The Thunder are going to take Sam Billings as a platinum pick. Obviously, he was there last year. I guess there's a chance that another club might have a crack at Sam Billings before he gets to number 7, and I would expect that the Thunder probably would try and match it. He's kind of, a guy who wicket keeps and bats like he does. He's also a leader, as we spoke about with Faf as well. I think Sam Billings is a good guy, Dan, to have around the dressing room, and I think. I think Sam Billings just feels like a Thunder player, and I think they'll want him back.
Yeah, definitely. They've got a couple of sort of younger keepers in their squad, don't they? Like Matt Gilks and Baxter Holt as well.
Holt.
Probably maybe still a year or two away from sort of really hitting their straps as BBL players. So Sam Billings, it seemed like a pretty good pick there, and he had such a good impact last year that wouldn't surprise me if they went back there. But let's finish off the first round.
It's possible he could even be captain. I mean, it sounds like maybe Jason Sanger is who they're looking at maybe as captain. But look, if they were told by Cricket Australia that they could make David Warner captain for the last 5 weeks, then maybe Sam Billings is the perfect guy to do it till the baton gets passed over. So, yeah.
Yes, David Warner. Now, we could talk about that all day, couldn't we, get stuck on that topic. But, Dan, you've got the last pick of the platinum round in our News Corp BBL draft. Who are you going to pick for the Hurricanes?
Ben mentioned the entertainment factor before, that clubs might be obliged to do it. There's not many people that are more entertaining on and off the field in cricket than old DJ Bravo. Like, he may be 39 by the time BBL 12 rolls around, but he's still got it, especially with the ball. He's the all-time leading wicket taker in T20 cricket, and in the recent IPL, he claimed 16 wickets at an impressive 12.8 strike rate. So I think he'd form a really nice death bowling partnership with Nathan Ellis, who we've seen in other T20 leagues across the world rather, thrive. So I think Dwayne Bravo will be a nice fit down there at the Canes.
Yep, so that's the platinum round of our News Corp mock draft done for the BBL. We just had a question come in as well. When is the draft on? So it's going to be on Sunday. I don't think they have a fixed time as set yet, because I think it's going to take place after the Australia-Zimbabwe one-dayer that's on Sunday. So who knows when that could be over. If the team batting first is bowled out in 30 overs, could be over a lot earlier than expected, or it could go the full 100 overs, and that would mean that the BBL draft was pushed back a bit. But certainly on Sunday, and we'll have full coverage on all the News Corp websites, as well as I think Foxtel and KO you can watch the draft on as well. So it'll be a big event, and there's no doubt some that really take up the BBL as well. But kicking off the second round of our draft, which I think is platinum and gold players. So this is where another band of players could potentially be bid on. And pick 9 goes back to the Renegades, which is you, Dan Cherney. Who are you taking at pick 9?
I've taken the Pakistani leg spinner Shadab Khan. I think Rashid Khan is probably the best known leg spinner in world cricket, but Shadab's a very good player. He's been performed around the world for several years now. He's no stranger to the Big Bash. Played for the Heat, Sixers. He's right up there in the world rankings as well. He's a useful lower order hitter. I think he can provide a lot to the Renegades. He's probably an upgrade even on Mohamed Amir, who's given them pretty good service over several years. But that sort of mould of player, it's a different type of spinner. But he, look, I know the Renegades in real life are looking for spin, having parted ways with Cameron Boyce, somewhat controversially at the end of the season. So I think Shadab would be a great option there at the start of the second round.
Yeah, definitely. Been playing pretty well over in England, I think, recently as well. Dan Batten, we cross to you again for Melbourne Stars next pick. What are you going to do in this round?
Going to be a little bit controversial. The first pass of the mock draft so far. Obviously, we have to every team has to pass in at least one round, and I'm going to pass in the second round.
Okay, so it's over to me. I've got Brisbane Heat at pick 11, and I'm pretty happy that you didn't pick this guy because I think he suits Brisbane Heat needs perfectly. And I'm going to put a platinum bid on him as well, which hopefully will mean that we can retain him for the full season as well. And that's David Willy, who has played for the Scorchers before, big left arm all-rounder from England. And I think he just suits what Brisbane Heat needs perfectly. They haven't had over the last few seasons that guy that is capable of coming in at sort of number 6, number 7 and blasting a quick 20 or 30, and then someone that can also be pretty reliable either with the new or older ball as well. So I know James Basley took some steps forward in that role last year, but he's still pretty raw. Like, we haven't seen too much of him at BBL level. And Jack Wildermuth was really good early in the season last year, but ended up being dropped later on in the tournament. So I think David Willy, with his experience, perfectly suits what Brisbane Heat needs from an all-rounder. And if he got through as far as pick 11, I think the Heat would do very well to get on David Willy at that pick.
How's the salary cap looking, though, Tim?
Well, we're going to see what we do. You'll see what we do over the next couple of rounds. So 2 platinum players have just about exhausted our salary cap, but we've got a little bit up our sleeve just to fit that third international in under the salary cap, Dan.
I think that's a really good pick, Tim, because at the moment, we'll see what happens come Sunday, but at the moment, David Willy is the only player in that platinum category who doesn't have a contract in the UAE or South Africa that we've seen published anywhere. So there is a feeling that he could be there for the entire season. And even though out of the platinum picks, he's probably not in your top 6, but he is a good player, very experienced player, played international cricket, and the value that a team could get from having him from the entire season, that's very interesting. I mean, it could potentially see him go a lot higher than otherwise he would.
Definitely. So, Dan, I think you just posted an interesting question that's come in from Stephen in regards to how the decisions are made in regards to what players are paid for their services over here. So the platinum players obviously paid the most. I think that's around the $340,000 mark, Ben, which is similar numbers to what they're talking for David Warner to play a few games towards the back end of the tournament. And then I think Ben and Dan can probably confirm this for us, but it's a sort of a rolling scale from there. If you're a gold player, you get paid that little bit less. Silver, bronze,
gold's 260. Gold's 260. Silver, I think 175, and bronze, Dan, you're coming in about 105 or something like that, I think.
And it's also worth noting that is not prorated. So if you come to 6 games and you're a platinum player, you get that full whack. So you actually get less. The less work you do, you don't get any less money, which is a nice position to be.
And also the clubs, there's no reason why they shouldn't take a platinum, because the gap between your gold level at 260 and your platinum at 340, that 80 grand is paid for by Cricket Australia. So it actually costs the teams nothing in terms of their cap space to go a platinum over a gold. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be doing the right thing by the competition and getting the big names in.
Yeah. Well, speaking of big names, Ben, you're at pick 12 and you've got the Sixers again. Who are you going to take with their second pick in our draft?
I'm going to go and look. My understanding is that Colin Munro, who was part of that championship-winning Scorchers team last year, is available for the entire season as a gold player. That looks like incredible value to me. You know, top international player, and you get him for the whole season. So the Sixers are going to have a crack at trying to steal him.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Dan Cherney, you're the Scorchers,
you're just breaking up there, Cherney.
Sorry to report, Ben, but he's too good to pass up. So I'm going to retain Colin Munro there for the whole time, as you said. Big part of the Scorchers being part of our title-winning team last summer. Veteran New Zealander, very handy runs around the number 4 mark. I think if there's one, the Scorchers are a very strong team, full stop. But I think if there's one area that they would rather weigh more heavily on in terms of investing at the draft, it would be batting. I think their bowling, they always have that conveyor belt of WA quicks, don't they? The likes of Jason Behrendorff, etc. And they've got some good spin options coming through with Peter Hatziglou. But I think, I would be going for Colin Munro there.
And they lost Curtis Patterson as well, didn't they? He's gone back to the Sixers, back to New South Wales. So makes sense to take a top order batter. Ben, so it's back to you with the Sixers. What are you going to do with your pick instead of taking Munro?
Well, after hearing that crushing news, we're going to pass in and skip this round.
Deflating. We'll have to regroup and we'll get you back in round 3 then for the on behalf of the Sydney Sixers. So pick 14 then hands over to me, and I am going to put a bid on a player that is available for attention, and that's Joe Clark, who played last year for the Melbourne Stars. I think one thing that the Strikers could really use for the first half of the tournament is a top-order batsman that's also capable of taking the gloves, and Joe Clark was one of the best performed players for the Melbourne Stars last year, so we'll try and land Joe Clark.
Unfortunately, I will be retaining Joe Clark. Played a little bit of funny buggers before passing in this round, but we're going to have to match that bid. He was in the top 10 run scorers last season. His first season at BBL level wasn't great, but last year he was really good at the top of the order there with Marcus Stoinis, and scored 419 runs at 151 strike rates, and also kept wicket as well. So, yeah, we're going to be locking Joe Clark in.
That's disappointing. All right, we'll stay in England anyway for a look, because we had 2 names written down for this potential pick for the Strikers, and the other one's Tom Banton, who didn't play last season for Brisbane Heat. So I won't be, I wouldn't be bidding against myself anyway, let's be honest, because I'm acting on behalf of those 2 clubs. But I think Tom Banton, for the period that we saw him for Brisbane Heat, he showed some glimpses of the capabilities that we know. He's sort of, when he's on, he's one of the most inventive batsmen in the world, one of those 360 players that can hit it anywhere. And I think his strike rate's always really high. His average in the recent Vitality Blast wasn't the best, but I like picking guys, especially English batsmen, that have been exposed to the BBL before, because quite often when guys coming out for their first season, we see them struggle for a while and take some time to acclimatise. But I think Tom Benton coming in, he could have an impact at the top of the order, and he could keep until Alex Carey gets back. So he seems like a pretty good option for the first half of the year for the Adelaide Strikers. But Ben, over to you. You've got pick 16 on behalf of the Thunder. Who are you going to lock in here?
Well, you guys might know better than me what the retention rights on this bloke might be, so someone might be about to spoil my party. But the Thunder are going to take Tom Curran. Very handy players, played for the Sixers in the past. And, if you look at the Sixers and their successful lineup, they're able to call on, Dan Christian, these sort of guys down the order, Ben Dorshus, who can bowl and bat. They bat deep. I think the Thunder need to bat deeper and have a few guys in that middle order that can do all facets of the game. So I think, I think he'd be a good pick.
Yeah, I think if you can get him at pick 16, you'd be really happy. Not often a player of that quality slips to pick 16 in a draft, Dan, Batten.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Tom Curran, like in KFC Supercoach BBL, he's been a superstar. Really, he's been probably the most dominant player and an absolute must-have. So it'd be interesting to see him at the Thunder. It would certainly ignite the rivalry between the Battle of the Bridge there. So
he is, Ben, I've just checked, he is eligible for retention as well. But you're also acting on behalf of the Sixers today, so I don't think you're going to jump out your own bid. But it'd be one of the great things to see on draft night if the Sixers and the Thunder sort of went head-to-head for a player, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, that's the beauty of this draft. I can, self-interest wins.
Yeah, exactly right. Finish off round 2 for us, Dan Batten. You're in with the Hurricanes again, and you've got the next couple of picks as well because, as we said earlier, this is where the draft enters snake order. So the Hurricanes pick last in round 2 and then first in round 3. So you can take it away for the next few picks.
Yeah, that's right. So 2 picks in a row. We're going to pass in this round because it's a platinum and gold. And with the first pick of the third round, we're going to place a bit of a bid, and it's coming your way, Tim. We've obviously seen you take 2 platinum players at the start. Will you be able to afford a Mujeeb Ur Rahman? We're going to bid on him as a silver, obviously with silver and gold being available in this third round band.
Nah, we just don't have the salary cap, to be honest. We've spent up big on our first two picks. We've got 2 stars in to fill probably our 2 most important needs. And I think the depth of spinners available probably means that we can look elsewhere and even look in maybe the bronze category for a bit of a bargain to complement Matt Kuhneman. So the Heat will let the Hurricanes have Mujeeb on this occasion.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Essentially, you see in the IPL even spinners often do go later in the piece and they try to get the value there rather than and look at all-rounders at the top. But yeah, I think Mujeeb, what he brings is just economical bowling. He's gone at less than 7 runs per over in his last 2 BBL stints. And I think he complements that attack nicely. Obviously, Riley Meredith, Nathan Ellis, breakout bowler Tom Rogers last year as well had a really good campaign. I think he can just hold down those middle overs, go for, maybe take a wicket or 2 and go for 24 off his 4 overs. So I think it's a nice little pick up there for the Hurricanes.
So we mentioned the orders flipped, which puts you up next, Ben, on behalf of the Thunder. There is one name who I think you might be eyeing that has a bit of experience wearing the green in Sydney.
Yeah, I thought we might as well just get another Englishman in. Alex Hales will be the Thunder's pick for a silver, which I think is excellent value. I mean, I was sort of half thinking that Hales might even come in at the platinum level. I mean, he has been very successful in the BBL. The Thunder would be laughing if they can get him as a silver player. And guess what? When he leaves, David Warner just slots in. So, if they can, I think the Thunder will want to retain Alex Hales, and if they can get to the point that we're at now, they'll be laughing.
Definitely. Dan Cherney, you've got the third pick for the Scorchers at pick 20. What are you going to do here?
Should say it's strong mail that Thunder will actually go for Alex Hales at some point. That's the talk around the league. But with the Scorchers, I'm going to pass here. Already probably close to maxing out the cap as it stands. So we'll have a bit of a break. We are the reigning champions. We're pretty happy to rest on our laurels. So we'll see in the 4th round.
Now, I might be stretching the salary cap here because I'm up at pick 21 for the strikers, and I've already got a platinum bid where I had to match for Rasheed, and then I've got a gold bid in on Tom Benton, but I'm going to bid on another gold player in this round and go for Russo, who played a few games last year for the Melbourne Renegades. Didn't really set the world on fire in the BBL, but finished second over in the Vitality Blast in the run scorers, and I think went at some ridiculous strike rate, close to 190 for his sort of 600, 650 runs in that tournament. And historically, sort of Vitality Blast stats haven't translated all that well to the BBL. We know the grounds are a lot smaller over there. Will Jacks is a good example of that. Like, he absolutely dominated a few seasons ago over in England, and then only lasted about 4 or 5 games before he got dropped by Hobart. But I think Riley Russo's that experienced enough that he'd be a perfect replacement for John Wells, who's left the Strikers and gone over to the Melbourne Renegades. So I think Russo's one of the better middle order batting options available, and you get him in at number 4 or number 5. And he'd be that guy that if they lost a couple early wickets, he could dig in, or if he was coming in a bit later in the innings, we know he can hit pretty interestingly as well. So I think it'd be a great pick for the Strikers. Well, I was pick 21. Pick 22 is the Sixers, which is you up again, Benny. You picked a lot of Englishmen. I think you're going that way again.
Yeah, can't get enough of them in Sydney. Got a few apartments overlooking Coogee Beach. This pick, we're going to go for James Vince as a silver, and I think that will possibly be a genuine tactic for the Sixers. I mean, as I said before, I think they like showing loyalty. James Vince is a winner. He might not have the profile of some of these other international stars, but he's got a great track record in the BBL and has won tournaments in other leagues as well. So they really know what they're going to get. But he is only available for half the tournament. So I think if the Sixers can wind the clock down to the silver category and get him there, they will. James Vince, back to the Sixers.
Back to me with the Brisbane Heat in this snake order that we've got, and I've just about exhausted our budget, so I think it's pretty clear to say that I'm going to pass and wait and hopefully snag a bargain in the silver-bronze last round of the draft. So, Dan Batten, you're up at pick 24 for the Stars. What are you going to do here?
Going to be doing the same, Tim, especially with all the stars on the stars list. I'm not sure how we're going to pay them all, so we're going to be looking at a bronze pick next up, I reckon.
So you've had to wait a while for the Renegades' next pick, Dan Cherney. What way are you going with pick 25?
We're sort of lucky here because the draft snakes again in the 4th round. So we decided to pass here at pick 25 and then try to get a cheaper option in the 4th round. And with pick 26, we're going to go for Usman Shinwari, who is a forgotten player in the BBL, but really strong first half of the season in 2018-19 when the Renegades won the title. Pakistani left armour. Rapid. We've got Trent Boltz, but he's going to duck off. We think Shinwari can sort of help support that. I just think the Renegades, having brought in John Wells in the off-season, their batting's not too bad now. I don't mind what they've got with the bat. They've got the likes of Harvey and Harper and Fraser McGurk, Marsh, Finch. There's a fair bit of batting there, but I just think the bowling is what needs some bolstering. So I know I've gone very bowler-heavy here in the draft, but I'm going to go for Shinwari with that 3rd pick.
Pretty good attack, and Marvel Stadium notoriously plenty of wickets taken there as well. So you'd say there's a fair chance of those guys running through some opponents early on in the BBL when they're all together. So back to you, Dan Batten, with the Stars last pick of our mock draft. Who are you going to take here?
I'm going to go for someone who has a bit of entertainment factor. You might say he's a bit washed up at 38, and most people know this guy from a fiery spell to Shane Watson in the 2015 ODI World Cup. That's Wahab Riaz from Pakistan. He's still on the T20 domestic circuit. He's 38 years of age, and he has been spanked a little bit in some other comps, but finished the Pakistan Super League nicely with 9 wickets in his last 7 games. And you wouldn't want to get on his bad side. Obviously, we've seen Harris Ralph tear it up at the MCG and intimidate the batters. I think that Wahab Riaz, he may be a cheaper option of a Harris Ralph, but I think he could certainly put some fear into opposition batsmen this BBL.
I don't mind it. So speaking of bargains, I reckon I've found one here at pick 28. I said that I've just about exhausted the salary cap for the Brisbane Heat. And there was a couple of players. I was trying to pick one a bit from left field for this pick, and I think I've found one. And that is Rehan Ahmed, who's a young leg spinner from over in England. And I just want to get him in and lay claim to this guy as sort of having played for our franchise, because like he's just about, or looks like one of the next stars of world cricket. I think he took the under-19 World Cup by storm sort of a year or two ago now, and bowled really well. I think 19 wickets in 14 games in the Vitality Blast as well. So really starting to find his feet at domestic level over in England as well. I think we'll be able to take him as a bronze player as well here, and hopefully we can pair him with Matt Kuhneman for most of the tournament as well, because I don't know how much interest he would potentially have from the UAE or South Africa either. So a slightly tactical pick there, in that, I'm hoping that he flies enough under the radar that he won't leave halfway through the tournament. And he'll be our replacement essentially for Mujeeb Rahman, who Dan took a bit earlier in the draft. So the other player that I was looking at, I just wanted to throw out there, was Ali Khan, who's a USA quick, who's taken some wickets over in the Caribbean Premier League. So it just depended how left field I want to go, and I think Brisbane probably needs a spinner. If they miss Mujeeb Rahman, obviously a bit more than they need a quick, having got Xavier Bartlett from the in last summer with some success. So ended up picking Rehan Ahmed, and I think he'd be a name that could bowl quite well over here in the BBL as well.
What about Paul Sterlington? You've been talking him up to lead up of the draft, the Irish opener. Why haven't you picked him?
He just didn't suit our needs. So we've got Duplessis in, we've got David Willy in. Both of those will bat sort of top 6, top 7. And couldn't really see myself picking a third bat. So I went for sort of the unknown Levy from over in England anyway. But I really hope that's my one hope out of Sunday, that someone picks Paul Sterling, because I think he'll become like he will take on Craig Simmons levels of cult hero status in the BBL if someone picks him and he goes off in a couple of his early innings. So hopefully that does eventuate. Unfortunately, just couldn't fit him in for the Brisbane Heat. And I also had pick 29, which was the strikers. And we know that clubs are limited to 3 bids in this draft, and I've already had my 3 for the strikers. So I have to pass with pick 29, which hands it over to you, Dan Cherney, at pick 30 for the Scorchers.
Yeah, we had one left up our sleeve, having passed in the 3rd round. And we're going to remain loyal here and go for Laurie Evans, who was the hero in the final last season, the Englishman. Crucial 76 not out against the Sixers at Marvel Stadium when Perth were under the pump early. Not a really big name or particularly flashy, but he really pulled a rabbit out of his hat when it was needed. Further middle order support, and I think again it's about stability here. Don't have to use a retention pick either, so nice to be able to pick up a important player at pick 30.
Definitely. Isaac has just told me disappointingly that he reckons Rehan Ahmed is signed over in the UAE, so that's a blow already to Brisbane Heat's draft strategy, if that's the case. But can we still have Ali Khan? Can we go back and take that pick again? The Sixers, Thunder, and Hurricanes we've got to round us out with the last 3 picks anyway. Ben, you're up for the Sixers. You're going to go with a batsman or a bowler to round out your internationals.
Well, we're going to go for our first non-Englishman. We're going to go for Pakistani fast bowler Mohamed Amir. He's available for the whole tournament. I know we haven't really seen him at international level for a while, but serious bowler when he's going. I just think you can't have enough guys who are capable of bowling at the death. The Sixers are pretty well stocked in terms of batsmen, and also don't forget there is still a chance they might be able to sneak Steve Smith late in the tournament as well. So I like the idea of just adding to the bowling stocks and getting Mohamed Amir in. And so one point I wanted to make when I announced James Vince earlier was that could be a genuine tactic from other teams to try and take James Vince as a gold player, try and force the Sixers' hand and take them up to that level. So I'd be interested to see whether that plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, you've got the penultimate pick in our News Corp BBL draft, and that's for the Thunder. But I think you're all out. You might have already taken your 3 players.
I'm out. I was hoping to get the Romanian Pavel Florin in, but I've been told that I've got no picks left.
I assume that's who Dan Batten's taken with the last pick. That surely has to be the case, Dan.
Look, it was tossing up between Pavel Florin, the spinner, obviously, and Jimmy Neesham. And I just went with Jimmy Neesham, even though he's got partial availability. But I think he's too good to pass up at this final pick. Obviously, still a middle order batter and and bowler in the New Zealand T20 side, and he was absolutely pivotal in that in their World Cup semi-final against England. They're hitting 27 off 11, so he can still do it. And even though I think I've signed 3 partial availability players, which isn't the best sign, but hopefully we'll have the likes of maybe a Darcy Short there for the whole tournament. But I'm hoping that these quality players can provide us with plenty when they are with the Canes this summer.
Definitely. So that jump in, Dan.
It is worth noting that there is, sorry, Tim, it is worth noting there is a mechanism to bring in replacement overseas players as well. So that's going to be another tactic, and there's no draft for that. So that'll be, and look, I know there were a few concerns about potentially guys sort of clubs just sort of siloing away players just for to pick them up mid-season. So while I don't think that'll be Pavel Florin, players who are a bit less, a bit more off Broadway might end up coming in and playing important roles post the UAE exodus.
Yeah, nice. So hopefully that our News Corp BBL mock draft has given you a bit of an idea of how things could play out on Sunday. As we said, the first BBL draft is going to take place after Australia against Zimbabwe in the one-day international. So follow the scores and that'll give you some indication as to when that match is going to wrap up.